What if your silence became a blade, sharp enough to cut through someone's pride, a wound no insult could ever deliver, yet one they feel every time the room goes quiet? Most people believe power comes from shouting, from fighting back, from proving themselves. But the truth is darker. Real power begins the moment you stop speaking, because silence doesn't fade like words. It lingers. It echoes inside their mind long after you've walked away. What happens when the world no longer has access to you? Not your words, not your laughter, not even your anger, just silence. Most people believe power comes from confrontation, from striking back, from making their voice louder than the one that offended them. But the ancients knew a darker truth. There is no weapon sharper than absence. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. And what greater waste than pouring our time, our fire, our soul into those unworthy of it?" When you withdraw, when you vanish from their stage, you force them to face the emptiness of their own performance. Imagine this. A man insults you in a crowded room. The crowd watches, waiting for your reply. They expect fire. But instead, you rise slowly, calm as stone, and you leave. No words. No words. No glance. Just your back fading into the distance. That silence echoes louder than any insult could. His words hang dead in the air. And the crowd doesn't remember what he said. They remember that you did not need to answer. Because silence is not weakness. It is a mirror, and it reflects their own pettiness back at them. It is the punishment that leaves no visible scar, but lingers in the mind like an unsolvable riddle. In the language of dark psychology, this is called deprivation, the denial of what they crave most, your reaction. Every manipulator, every aggressor, every petty soul feeds on attention. And when you refuse to feed them, they starve, not in the body, but in the ego. The Stoics understood this well. Epictetus said, "Any person capable of angering you becomes your master." The moment you refuse to be provoked, you take back control. You walk away, and in doing so, you win the war without lifting a finger. But silence is not just withdrawal. It is presence through absence. It is a haunting that lingers longer than confrontation ever could. Because while words are forgotten, silence is remembered. It gnaws at them in the quiet hours. It makes them question why you no longer grant them access. And in that questioning, they suffer. Walking away is not defeat. It is strategy. It is the art of leaving your enemy with nothing but their own emptiness. A silent punishment that cuts deeper than any retaliation. So the next time you are tempted to shout, to argue, to prove yourself, remember this: the strongest men do not waste breath on the undeserving. They vanish. They vanish. And their silence becomes a storm that never stops echoing, because sometimes the loudest voice is the one that says nothing at all. The silence cuts deeper than a blade, but silence is only the surface. Beneath it lies the ancient Stoic principle of withdrawal. The Stoics understood something we often forget in this restless age. Power does not come from reaction, but from detachment. The man who reacts is chained to his enemy, chained to their words, chained to the storm outside of him. But the man who withdraws, he is free. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Think about that. The one who insults you wants you to mirror him, to descend to his level, to play his game. But when you refuse, when you remove yourself entirely, you deny him that satisfaction. And in doing so, you assert a dominance that is unshakable. Withdrawal is not weakness. It is discipline. It is the art of saying, "I do not need to fight you, because your fight is too small for me." When you step back, when you detach, you reveal just how much they depended on your presence, your reaction, your fire. You show them that their world is smaller without you in it. and that realization burns longer than any retaliation. This is why true strength is not loud. It is not found in shouting or striking or endlessly proving yourself. True strength is quiet. It is the man who walks away, not because he fears the battle, but because he knows it is beneath him. But withdrawal has another, darker edge. Darker edge. When you leave, you don't just take yourself, you take the validation they craved. You take away the fuel that kept their ego burning. And suddenly, they are left with nothing but the cold silence of their own dependence. That is the essence of the Stoic principle. To withdraw is to dominate, not through force, but through indifference. It is the victory of the man who needs nothing over the man who needs everything. Withdrawal is discipline, yes, but what follows withdrawal is something far more haunting. The shock of losing you. Humans take presence for granted. They grow accustomed to your voice, your energy, your availability. They believe you will always be there, like the air they breathe or the ground beneath their feet. But when that presence disappears, suddenly, without warning, it is like the floor giving way beneath them. The silence is not just quiet, it is deafening. Psychologists call this loss aversion. We suffer more from losing something we had than we ever rejoice in gaining something new. 100 victories cannot ease the sting of one absence, and this is why your withdrawal cuts so deeply. They only begin to measure your worth when it is no longer theirs to measure. Think of it like light. When the sun sets, only then do people remember its warmth. When a star burns out, only then do they realize how long its glow traveled to reach them. And when you step away, only then do they confront how much of their world was illuminated by your presence. Absence becomes sharper than confrontation because it creates an unanswered question, or a wound with no closure. Confrontation gives them something to fight against. Absence gives them nothing, and that nothing grows heavier with each passing day. In dark psychology, this is the cruel paradox. The less accessible you are, the more value people assign to you. Scarcity breeds desire. Rarity creates power, and when you remove yourself, your worth multiplies in their mind, because now it exists only in memory, not in reality. The Stoics understood this well. They trained themselves to imagine loss, to contemplate the absence of all they loved, not as cruelty, but as preparation. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning that the people he cherished could vanish by nightfall. To meditate on loss is to understand its power. And when you choose to create that loss in others, when you deny them your presence, you awaken that same realization within them. This is why walking away unsettles so deeply. It forces others to face a truth they resist. You are the source of something they cannot replace. And once it's gone, the void speaks louder than your voice ever could. Your absence is not just silence. It is shock. It is the earthquake that makes them realize the ground was never as stable as they thought. The shock of losing you is only the beginning, because once the silence settles, a darker law of human nature awakens, the law of scarcity. Dark psychology reveals a simple truth. What is scarce becomes valuable. Diamonds are only stone until their rarity turns them into symbols of wealth and power. Gold is only metal until its scarcity crowns it as treasure, and in the same way, your presence is ordinary when it is constant. But when you make yourself scarce, it transforms into something rare, untouchable, irreplaceable. Seneca once wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." Human beings crave endlessly as if time will never run out. They treat abundance as disposable, assuming it will always be there. But scarcity reveals the lie. The world will tempt you to flinch, to defend, to lash out. But the man who remains still within, who refuses to give away his emotions so cheaply, holds a power others cannot comprehend. Emotional detachment is not coldness. It is not apathy. It is discipline. It is discipline. It is the art of saying, "You cannot move me because I belong to myself." And this, paradoxically, grants you influence. Because in a world where everyone is ruled by impulses, the one who resists becomes the one others quietly follow. In dark psychology, control over self becomes control over others. Why? Because emotions are contagious. Anger provokes anger. Fear spreads like fire, but calm unsettles. Calm dominates. The one who does not react becomes the center of gravity in every room. And soon, all others orbit him. This is why absence of emotion can strike harder than presence of rage buttons and to rage is predictable. To detach is terrifying. They cannot argue with someone who refuses to argue. They cannot manipulate someone who refuses to play. And in that refusal, you hold absolute leverage. The Stoics trained for this daily day. They practiced seeing insult as air, fortune as temporary, loss as inevitable. To them, detachment was not a shield against life, it was freedom within it. So remember this. The man who controls his emotions controls the game. His silence is not empty. His absence is not weakness. His detachment is his crown, because true freedom is not found in escaping chains, but in refusing to be bound in the first place. Detachment shields you from control, but its power doesn't stop there. Because absence is not only a weapon against others, it is a forge for yourself. It is a forge for yourself. When you step back, when you refuse to react, something begins to shift within. The energy you once spent on conflict, on proving, on chasing, returns to you. And with it comes clarity, focus, direction. This is the hidden gift of withdrawal. It strengthens you. While others waste themselves in petty wars, you build. While they exhaust themselves trying to provoke you, you conserve your fire for creation. Your silence, your distance, becomes the soil where discipline grows. The Stoics called this alchemy, the transformation of pain into power, the turning of loss into liberation. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. To suffer, to lose, to be abandoned. These are not chains, unless you choose to wear them. This is why absence cuts so deeply. It doesn't just create longing, it exposes dependence. It leaves them staring into their own emptiness, realizing that the validation, the attention, the power they thought was theirs was only ever granted by you. The Stoics knew this well. Epictetus taught that external things are never truly ours, only on loan from fortune. And when they are taken away, we should not grieve. The same lesson applies in reverse. When you take yourself away, those who relied on you must face the same reality. They never owned what they believed they did. Dark psychology frames this as ego collapse. The mind resists loss, but even more, it resists the truth that it was never in control. And absence delivers both truths in a single strike. So remember this, walking away is not just silence and not just strength. It is revelation. It is the moment their illusion breaks, and they finally see who held the power all along. Absence shatters illusions. But sometimes the story doesn't end with disappearance. Sometimes the greatest punishment is your return. Not the same return they expect. Not the man they once knew, easy to provoke, easy to take for granted. No, the return of presence is a re-entry, controlled, deliberate, and transformed, like a king emerging from exile, not diminished, but reborn in discipline and strength. When you step back into their world, you do so as someone utterly changed. Your silence has tempered you. Your solitude has sharpened you. And when you appear again, the contrast is undeniable. They cannot ignore the growth. They cannot ignore the growth. They cannot dismiss the shift, and it forces them to confront a truth that terrifies them. While they remained the same, you evolved. Dark psychology calls this the power of contrast. What was once familiar becomes unfamiliar. What was once ordinary now feels extraordinary. The absence prepared the stage, the return delivers the impact. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, and when you return after absence, you do not argue, you do not explain, you embody. Your presence becomes the argument, undeniable, unshakable." This is why temporary absence can be even more devastating than permanent withdrawal. It is not just loss, it is revelation. A living reminder of what they once had, now magnified, elevated, out of reach. To disappear is power, but to return transformed is sovereignty. Absence is not escape. It is strategy. Throughout history, the strongest men have known that true power is not in what you give, but in what you withhold. To remain silent when provoked, to withdraw when clung to vanish when taken for granted. These are not acts of weakness, they are acts of mastery. They are acts of mastery. The Stoics taught that control is not about bending the world to your will, but about mastering yourself within it. And sometimes the most disciplined act is to step back, to remove your words, your presence, even your emotions, and in that absence, to reveal the truth no one wants to face. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In other words, let them misjudge your silence. Let them call your withdrawal cowardice. It does not matter, because in the long run, you will see what they cannot. That absence is not the end of power, and it is its highest form. To vanish is to reset the balance. To step away is to reclaim the time, the focus, the energy that was wasted on the undeserving. And when you do, you discover something profound. The less the world has of you, the more it realizes your worth. So remember this, absence is not emptiness. It is presence, concentrated. It is the storm contained in silence. It is the shadow that weighs heavier than the body. And when you master the discipline of vanishing, you no longer need to fight for respect. Your absence demands it.